The 2025 Silverstone Grand Prix just took place, an instant classic. Let's go ahead and look at how each driver and team has performed, starting with the worst performers of the weekend, ending with the highest scorers of the main race, starting with Racing Bulls. First of all, I predicted an Isaac Hadjar DNF, but it didn't happen the way I predicted it. I predicted that Yuki will crash into Hadjar, ending Hadjar's race, but what happened is low visibility, Hadjar fucks into the back of Kimi Antonelli, takes both of them out of the race. Antonelli retired a few laps later. He took revenge for what Kimi did to Max in Austria, so I think that is good for his future in the Red Bull Racing team. Liam Lawson, he got Esteban Ocon, and to be fair to Esteban Ocon, there was also someone else on his inside. I think it was Yuki Tsunoda, so there was not really much room going into that. He could have probably taken a slightly wider line, but in his mind he definitely made the overtake. And by the time Esteban decided to pull out of all of the three of them going into turn 5, it was too late, and suspension damage for Liam Lawson. Nothing he could have done. A day to forget for the Racing Bulls. Back-to-back 0 points for Isaac Hadjar. Liam Lawson had a great performance in Austria, but Silverstone bit him in the ass. Up next, we got Haas. Oliver Bearman, this is what I predicted before the race. I predicted Bearman to score points, and he was right up on there. He was fast, and if it was not for Yuki Tsunoda spinning him around, he probably would have. So, great race by Oliver Bearman, and shame on Esteban Ocon. Started ahead of his teammate and still managed to finish behind him. Yes, the pit strategy got a little bit fucked up, but he could have done better. That's all I'm gonna say. And this is the thing that I have been looking for. Esteban Ocon getting bested by a teammate. And also, he did an Esteban Ocon thing in the race as well. He crashed into Oliver Bearman. I don't know, like carbon fiber started to fly. I think it was Esteban's car. Oliver's car was relatively undamaged. And this, again, is an Esteban Ocon problem. Something that Haas needs to understand. If you motherfuckers are midfielders, then you shouldn't be fighting with each other. There should be team orders at play in this type of scenarios, because Esteban Ocon is a piece of shit and he will try to make an overtake at the most dangerous place possible, risking both of the drivers' races. So again, very happy that Esteban had a bad weekend, but I really wanted Bearman to score points, which could have had happened, but Ocon's crash and the Yuki Tsunoda spinning him around, you cannot do it all. Up next, we got Mercedes. Now, these guys, they were the favorites going into the Grand Prix, considering the temperatures would have been low. That's where these guys struggle, especially Osama bin Russell. But this time, Mercedes, their strategy got fucked up. He went on to the hard tires a bit too early, and during that period of time, the safety car came in, so he couldn't really capitalize on that. And also, he had a bunch of off-track excursions. Kimi Antonelli, on the other hand, he just got hit by Isaac Hadjar, nothing he could have done. That was his race. A day to forget by Mercedes. A track they were pretty good at. A track where they could have been the favorites. A lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda in this Grand Prix. And this is British Grand Prix typically. This is why I said it's an instant classic. It's because a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda is going to pop up. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Quoting George Russell himself. And, that's all she wrote. Up next, we got Williams. I thought both of these two guys, or at least one of the Williams, will DNF because they didn't find or fix their issues. So if you don't remember, Williams have been DNFing consistently for the last few Grand Prix, and the reason is some system integration issues. They don't know what is exactly causing it, and on Thursday, the pre-race press conference, Alexander Albon explained that they have no fucking clue where to look for, and also after the race, in the post-race show, Alex Albon confirmed that they still need to resolve the issue. So I was kind of very surprised of a points finish for Alexander Albon, and Carlos Sainz was very competitive as well. They had more pace in the dry than in the wets, which is again expected to see, but I guess I'm just surprised to see both of these guys take the checkered flag, and extremely surprised to see Alexander Albon bringing in some points. Good performance by Alex. I hope these guys go ahead and find the source of the new Williams curse, which seems to be getting them DNFs on a consistent manner, except for in Silverstone Grand Prix. Up next, we got Alpine. This is a big one. So first, big shout out to Pierre Gasly for dragging the tractor to P8 in the quali in the dry and then P6 in the main race. He was defending for his life. He was defending against Fernando, against Lewis, against Max. Obviously, as the track started to dry, he dropped like a stone in a lake because the car is shit and there's nothing much he could have done. And this is a huge problem with Alpine because they have a great driver and they're just wasting some of the best years of his life, because this is the best Pierre Gasly we have ever seen and he is constantly improving. The worst part is that he's wasting a lot of that talent in a shit team and he's pulling out all of these magical results that these guys definitely don't deserve. Either way, let's talk about Franco Colapinto. Alpine are destroying Franco Colapinto's career. When you are a rookie, when you are starting out your Formula One career, the most important thing for you is stability. You need to be in a team where your seat and your position is stable so that you can start focusing on the things that make you a good racing driver. And one of the key things that focuses and makes you a good racing driver is consistently executing race weekends cleanly. If every race weekend you are going in and the media is asking you shit questions about Franco, will you be here in the next race? Franco, what about your future in Formula One? Franco, what about your sponsors? And then obviously Flavio Briatore putting unnecessary pressure on Franco. When all of these things are happening, it becomes very difficult for a rookie to go ahead and build the necessary momentum required to become a good racing driver. The thing about scoring points and scoring podiums, fighting for race wins and eventually championships, that comes significantly later. The initial part of the job is to just get along with the program and just consistently execute each of the tasks you need to do as a driver throughout the race weekend. And Franco, with all of the pressure that he has, he is buckling under it, and naturally it's expected because he's a rookie and Alpine are shitheads. They have a shit car. They're putting Franco and they're saying that, hey, you have 5 races until you start fighting for podiums or we will kick you out of the fucking team. That's not how it works, and that's not how you develop confidence for the upcoming drivers. Look at what Toto Wolff is doing with Kimi. He is letting Kimi make his own mistakes, creating a good nurturing environment, and most importantly, there is stability. This allows Kimi to focus on the individual things he needs to do and execute race weekends cleanly, something that Franco never had. Even during his Williams stint, everything was uncertain. He was a mid-season replacement, he had a few good results, and then the pressure of Formula One just got to him, and that's a key part of being a Formula One driver. Now, Pierre Gasly, obviously, as I just mentioned, one of the best drivers on the grid, and he's just wasting his talent in a piece of shit car. The people in the garage are pretty good considering how much of a turnaround Pierre Gasly had from Friday all the way to Sunday. But at the same time, things need to change in this organization, the way they manage their drivers and the way they approach car development. Up next, we got Aston Martin. Lance Stroll was running in the podium position, P3, for a long time. Not a long time, but like a handful of amount of laps. And he had 3 podium finishes before. And behind him was Nico Hülkenberg. It was amazing to see Hülkenberg pass Lance Stroll. But Lance Stroll drove a good race. Coming from P17 and taking the checkered flag at P7. Yes, the strategy worked really well. And yes, Fernando Alonso is the unluckiest driver in the grid. I get all of that. But Lance Stroll still drove a pretty good race, and in the post-race interviews he actually shared some insights. He said that the tires were degrading quite quickly, both in the medium and in the softs, and their pace just dropped off, and that was actually visible on the track. Lance Stroll was going pretty well, and then he just started getting overtaken by everybody left, right and center, and if there were a few more laps, I think he could have tumbled down the order even further. Fernando Alonso, nothing much to say, started P7, finished P9. You win or lose, these type of races, dynamic conditions, you cannot win everything, and it's chaotic race. For the first part of the pit stops where people just put on slicks, went for a while like Lance Stroll did. Lance Stroll put on the soft tires, went on for a while. He went on to the soft tires at the perfect time, and then he went on to the inters after it started raining mid-race at the perfect time as well. And again, you have to understand in these type of situations, there is no right answer. They took the risk and gambled with Lance Stroll because he was P17, and technically they had nothing to lose because it's Lance Stroll. So it's just no problem in doing the experiment with him. But Fernando Alonso, obviously P7 point scoring position, the only reliable guy who can continually drive well. Obviously, they had to take a conservative approach with Fernando, and just it didn't work out. And this is one of the things that you need to keep in mind about the dynamic conditions of Silverstone, that sometimes the gambles just don't work out. Up next, Verstappen.com Racing. Okay, I predicted that Yuki Tsunoda will struggle and he will finish dead last, and that has come true. If you motherfuckers don't think that I'm the all-seeing oracle right now at this point, then I don't know what else to say to you. We will get to Max Verstappen in a second, but Yuki Tsunoda is dead. Red Bull has finally completed the sacrifice of another driver to their second car, and right now it seems that the performance of the first car is also deteriorating. Yuki had a decent qualifying session, and I knew that he's gonna go backward because it's very easy, not easy, but it's relatively simpler to hook up a lap in qualifying in the low downforce setup across one lap in the dry conditions, and it's extremely difficult to drive a tricky car in the low downforce setting in dynamic weather conditions around Silverstone, especially if it's the Red Bull. And Yuki Tsunoda's racecraft and skills are also not on a championship winning level. Let's be fucking honest. If you put him in a McLaren, he won't be winning. He had a little bit of spatial awareness issues. The crash that happened between Yuki and Franco in Austria was Yuki's mistake, and the crash that happened between Yuki and Bearman in Silverstone is also Yuki's mistake. So Yuki Tsunoda got a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision again, back-to-back races. He finished dead last again, back-to-back races. The Japanese driver also got a penalty point on his super license, so cherry on top. At this rate, the way he is driving and the way he is coming dead last, at this rate, he is more likely to get a race ban than Max Verstappen in the remaining 12 races of the season. So I guess we'll find out about that. The thing about Max Verstappen, now again in the future I will create a complete video breaking down the Red Bull's total chaotic weekend in Silverstone, so get subscribed if you're interested in that. Now Max Verstappen cannot even drive the car. That's how shit the car is. So Red Bull's technical team, they are a bunch of smartasses, right? They are like, you know what, our car is shit, we are going to lose time in the corners anyway. Let's just remove all of the downforce so that we are at least quick in the straights, and Max Verstappen can drive anything, and that's the only horse we have in the race. Fuck Yuki. And they did exactly that, and the strategy almost worked for them when Max Verstappen put the car on pole with a magnificent lap, but they were forgetting one thing. It's Silverstone, and the weather conditions are dynamic, and your car is actually shit. Adrian Newey, before he left the team, or after he left Red Bull and before he joined Aston Martin, he said it in an interview that Red Bull's team engineers, they mask the weaknesses of the car through setup changes. They will continually set up in a car in which the car's weakness will be avoided, and Max Verstappen could drive around that, but the other driver couldn't. So, and right now we are at a point in which even Max is finding the car visibly difficult to drive. Earlier it was already difficult, but he hid it through his performance. From outside we couldn't really see it, but in the 2025 Silverstone Grand Prix, he had that spin after the safety car restart because the tires were too cold, and then throughout the race he struggled to make any progress through the field until the track started drying up significantly. So until then, Max Verstappen was stuck in like P8 or something, and he was struggling to get past the Williams of Carlos Sainz, and then he was stuck behind Alexander Albon for a while. He was stuck behind what's his name, Pierre Gasly, another former Red Bull driver, behind him for a while. And over time, as the track dried up, and as he had a tire advantage compared to others, because Max Verstappen is good at managing his tires, even though the Red Bull cheers through it, he eventually started making progress and finished P5 in the race. If the race continued for a few more laps, I think he would have got Lewis Hamilton too in his home Grand Prix, which should have been sad for the British fans, but it is what it is. Verstappen.com Racing, they seriously need to change the way they develop their car, and this is one of the primary reasons why Max Verstappen needs to go to Mercedes. The writing's on the wall. Red Bull are not going to make a quick turnaround out of the mess that they have created themselves. For a long period of time, they have only bet on one horse, and now these motherfuckers have the audacity to get surprised if both of their drivers are not consistently fighting for the podium positions. It's unfucking believable, and this problem is not going to be fixed. Max needs to look elsewhere. We move on. Ferrari. First things first, Lewis Hamilton needs to stop being a bitch. He had a great weekend. He needs to calm the fuck down and be a little positive. The pace of the car was good, and considering how much he has struggled in the car and how much snappiness was there in the car, he drove pretty well around Silverstone. The car is not easy to drive, and we also saw Charles Leclerc struggling. He had a lot of off-track excursions, and this is a race weekend in which Lewis was substantially ahead of his teammate. Not substantially, but like convincingly ahead of teammate across all of the sessions. In qualifying, he looked quick. He fucked up the last sector. That's why he was not on the front row. In qualifying, he looked quick. In race stream, he looked quick. He had some good battles with Pierre Gasly. He had a good battle with George Russell. He was, finding his own rhythm in the car, even though the car was difficult to drive, especially in the wets. So great driving from Lewis Hamilton. I think he can head back to Maranello with his head held high. What he did, beating Charles Leclerc in such a dynamic condition when the car was not easy to drive, is nothing, not a simple feat. Obviously, towards the end, I would have loved to see a Lewis Hamilton podium. It would be nice to see if his streak continued. But towards the end, Ferrari screwed him by putting him on the softs rather than on the mediums that Nico Hülkenberg was on. So it was a matter of time before Lewis's tires started to go off. And also, when he was chasing Hülkenberg, I think the closest he got was like 5.5 seconds, and he continued to push harder and harder on those soft tires. And the track was basically a green track. The rain has washed away all the rubbers, but plenty of safety cars went in. Even though there was like an F3 or feature race or whatever, the track's rubber were basically gone, and still Ferrari decided it would be a great idea to put softs for the final stint on Lewis Hamilton's car, and that's basically where he lost the podium. But I cannot complain because Nico Hülkenberg got a podium, so I don't really give a shit about that. This is a sacrifice we are all willing to make. Either way, looking at Charles Leclerc, there's not much to say. He just had a scruffy little weekend, and it just shows a little bit that experience matters, especially around the British Grand Prix in dynamic conditions. I was a bit surprised by looking at Charles's race pace because I thought he would be faster than Lewis in the race stream like he usually is in a Ferrari. But most of the advantage that Lewis had over Charles in this race was during the wets. So I think that's something definitely they need to go look at. And Charles also said in the post-race interviews that he set up the car in a quite aggressive way, but he doesn't think the setup contributed to so much of the lack of performance that he had in the race. So again, I guess we will get to know the full picture in Spa. But great weekend from Lewis Hamilton, things to learn from Charles Leclerc. I think the setup did cost him a lot because I don't think Charles is a shit driver. I don't think anybody thinks that. But the amount of off-track excursions he had, I think is a little bit concerning. So probably it's the setup. We move on though. Sauber. So Gabriel Bortoleto had like a straightforward weekend, decent in qualifying, fucked up out of here in the race. And this is something that he definitely needs to work on. He had a DNF in Australia, dynamic conditions, tricky conditions. He had a DNF in Silverstone, dynamic conditions, tricky conditions. So I guess that's something he definitely needs to work on to, work on more on the feel of the car. I know it was tricky and I know that he was on the slick tires, so it could have happened anyone and you couldn't really read too much into it because plenty of drivers, including Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen and George Russell, lots and lots of experienced drivers were spinning out of the track, and it was a matter of where did you spin and how much pace you were carrying at the moment. Gabriel Bortoleto simply lost it at a bad place. That's why he ended up in the barriers and fucked up his rear wing entirely. So again, but either way, you cannot really lean into that. You cannot really point at other experienced drivers who are struggling and say that, well, they are struggling, so it justifies that. You kind of need to go ahead and look into what has happened. Discussing about Nico Hülkenberg, what a legend. Tell you what, in the last 3 Grand Prix, before Silverstone, he scored in the points, and I was getting pissed the fuck out of my mind because he did not get the driver of the day in any of them. In Spain, Max Verstappen got the driver of the day even though he crashed into George Russell. After that, in Canada, they gave the driver of the day award to Kimi Antonelli because it was his first podium, for fuck's sake. And then after that, in Austria, they gave the driver of the day award to Gabriel Bortoleto, who started P8 and finished P8. Nothing for Nico Hülkenberg, who started P20 and finished P9 in Austria. But now, in the Silverstone Grand Prix, started literally at the back of the grid, dragged the tractor onto the podiums with nothing but pure skill set. Obviously, they made some good calls along the way, but obviously through entirely pure skill set, this guy's an animal. And now he gets the well-deserved Driver of the Day award. Take a bow, all of you. He's the best driver on the grid, and this is the only reason why I'm not really mad that my prediction about a Lewis Hamilton podium didn't come true. It's okay. Sacrifices need to be made for greatness. And Nico Hülkenberg, after 239 race starts, finally got on the podium. The Formula 1 YouTube channel actually dropped a video, and the video's length is 2 minutes and 39 seconds. So that's a pretty nice touch over there. Congratulations to Nico Hülkenberg. Sauber are on a tear. They recently opened up a new technical office in UK somewhere. They're getting a lot of money. Their upgrades on the cars are now working, and they are now stringing in a decent momentum going into Spa-Francorchamps. Excited to see what these motherfuckers can do. Up next, we have McLaren. There's not much to say about these two guys, except for like the moment that Oscar Piastri had. So let's talk about that first. So basically what happened is Piastri fucked up. I know from a driver's standpoint, he's going out there and he's saying that, oh, I've been wronged and apparently you're not allowed to brake behind the safety car anymore. And I was doing that for multiple laps before that and nothing happened. And when he did the moment where he did, and this was the moment right before Max Verstappen spun out and, went all the way back to like P11 or something. When he was saying all of this, I was listening to it. I'm like, bro, why are you bullshitting? We all saw that. He almost came to a stop. He almost came to a complete halt on the track when slowing behind the safety car. He slammed on the fucking brakes, man. Because if you catch Max Verstappen, and Verstappen momentarily overtook Oscar Piastri. Verstappen doesn't really do that. He is very quick in reacting to other people around him, and if Verstappen overtook you, it means you slammed the fucking brakes. And you can go ahead and look back at the video. Piastri almost came to a halt. And this is one of the things that you need to keep in mind, that when you are trying to find the gray area, you cannot really go into the black. And when you slam the brakes so hard, you are going in the black. Another thing Piastri needed to rely on was his ability to get away. When he overtook Max Verstappen on track on pure skills, he was able to pull away. I think he pulled like a second of gap within like 3 corners or something like that. So again, a little bit of unnecessary gray area defensive style of driving from Oscar Piastri, because that's all it was. He wanted to, bunch up the field and do all that type of stuff, and so that he could have the perfect launch, which he is allowed to do. But I think he went in a little bit too desperate. I think he just had the pure pace to win just by raw pace, and Verstappen would have been behind him, and Lando was already putting pressure on Max. So there was no reason for Piastri to bring his car to almost a stop and then got himself a penalty. And while battling Lando in the final stint of the race, he kind of cheekily asked on the radio that if you guys think the penalty is unfair, please swap the positions. That's also another dick thing to do. And it's hurting me to say all of this because I want Piastri to win the World Championship this year. I'm still going to support him. It's just a weak moment, Oscar. Shit happens. You went in a little bit too greedy when you were doing the safety car defensive maneuver, because that's all it is. He was trying to just bunch up the field, didn't quite really work out, or slammed the brakes too hard. It was more impactful because Verstappen momentarily went ahead of him, and I haven't seen all of the data, but it seems that he slammed the brakes pretty too hard. It's a mistake. got a little bit too greedy, and that's one of the primary reasons why he was pissed the fuck off. He was not pissed off as much on the decision, but on how it affected his race. Because Verstappen took himself out. You know, he spun out, he was not a threat, and he had the pace of, like Oscar Piastri had the pace to keep Lando behind. So I refuse to believe that Piastri is mad because he got a 10-second penalty, but he is mad because he knew why he got the 10-second penalty, and that was an unnecessary thing to do. So I guess we will see, and the championship gap is now getting closer and closer. I think it's now at like 8 points. We will see what happens in Spa. Piastri is strong around that track. Should be fun. Both of these two guys are fighting, and I was hoping to see a battle of these two guys towards the end of the race, but that didn't happen. Hopefully in Spa. And the reason why it didn't happen is because Oscar Piastri had an off-track excursion towards the race. So a lot of interesting things were happening. We will see in Spa how these two guys are battling. Hopefully there will be an Oscar Piastri win, because Lando Norris is now gaining some momentum, especially after Canada. After Canada, Oscar was flying high because Lando made a very silly mistake and got himself out of the race. But after that, Lando, all the credit to Lando Norris, you have to now give it to him. Back-to-back wins, dominant wins, wins that he had to work hard for. In Austria, he defended against Piastri for 20 fucking laps. In British Grand Prix, it was a very chaotic race and he kept it all together. So credit to Lando Norris for those two back-to-back victories. Let's see if he can make it 3 in a row. Oscar Piastri needs to step his game up, needs to just stop becoming greedy and trying to, exploit the gray areas, because he can win on pure pace. He can win on merit. He has the car to do it, and I think he has a better racecraft than Lando Norris. So I guess we will see what happens in Spa. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.